Get your things and leave. This house is for family only. Margaret shouted as she threw my bag onto the sand. I don't care what my son says. You're just his wife, not real family. My name is Olivia. I'm 34, and my mother-in-law was kicking me out of our beach house while my husband James was away for work. For 8 years, this had been our summer home, a place full of happy memories with James and our daughter, Emma. Margaret stood on the deck, angry and red-faced. Behind her, my sister-in-law, Amanda, smirked. She was already imagining how she would turn my art studio into a playroom for her kids. Did you hear me? Margaret snapped. Pack up and go. Amanda's kids need the space. They're a real family. I calmly picked up my bag, brushing off the sand. Of course, Margaret, I understand. She frowned, expecting me to argue or cry. Well, good, she muttered, disappointed. James will agree. Family comes first. Oh, I'm sure he will, I said with a small smile as I walked inside to pack. I could hear Margaret and Amanda talking in the kitchen. That awful blue paint in the master bedroom. Gone? Margaret said. And that silly art studio? It'll be a perfect playroom. As I packed, I thought about James's grandfather, Robert. He had built this house with his own hands and always welcomed me, even when Margaret didn't. You're the daughter I always wanted, Robert had told me before he passed away. Promise me you'll keep this house full of love. Real family, not just blood. I had promised him, and he had done something to make sure I could. Margaret appeared in the doorway. I called a car for you, she said. Amanda's family will be here soon. I picked up my bag and smiled. Just one thing before I go, I should call the security company. Margaret frowned. Security? Why? To update the codes, can't have unauthorized people in a house. Amanda stepped forward. This is our family home. I looked at them and said, actually, it's mine. Robert left it to me. Silence. Margaret's face turned pale. Amanda's mouth hung open. You're lying, Margaret whispered. I pulled a paper from my purse. Want to see the deed? Robert made sure it was official. Margaret grabbed it with shaking hands. As she read the final paragraph, her eyes widened. Robert had left the house to me with a clear note. This home is for real family, not just blood. This can't be legal, Amanda said weakly. Oh, it's very legal, I replied. In fact, since you care so much about unauthorized people, I should ask you both to leave. I'll be changing the locks. Margaret gasped. You can't do this. We've spent 40 summers here. I smiled. Actually, I can. But unlike you, I believe family is about love, not just blood. So here's the deal. You both apologize sincerely. Then we'll sit down and make a fair schedule for using the house. One that includes everyone. I walked toward the door, then turned back. Oh, and Margaret? That awful blue paint in the master bedroom. It's staying. Robert picked it himself. The aftermath of my revelation rippled through the family like a tidal wave. Margaret and Amanda left that evening, slamming doors and making dire threats about lawyers and family betrayal. I spent that night alone in the beach house, sitting on the deck where Robert and I used to share our morning coffee, remembering his words about standing my ground. James called the next morning, his voice tight with concern. Mom called me in hysterics. Something about you kicking them out of the beach house? I took a deep breath, watching the waves roll in. Your mother tried to throw me out first, claiming the house was for blood relatives only. I simply showed her the deed Robert left me. There was a long pause. Grandpa Rob left you the house? His tone was surprise, but not angry. When? Last year, before he passed. He wanted to make sure it stayed a place for the whole family, not just the ones your mother approves of. I explained everything. Margaret's ambush, Amanda's smug plans for my art studio, their attempts to erase every trace of my presence in the house. James let out a slow breath. I'm sorry, Liv. I should have seen this coming. Mom's always been difficult with you. Difficult is putting it mildly, I said, thinking of 8 years of subtle jabs and not-so-subtle exclusions. But I'm not going to stoop to her level. The house stays open to everyone, as long as they can behave like actual family. I'm coming home, he decided. This needs to be handled in person. While waiting for James to arrive, I received a barrage of texts from extended family members. Some, like James's cousin Michael, were supportive. About time someone stood up to Aunt Margaret. Others, clearly influenced by Margaret's version of events, were less kind. I spent the day going through old photos Robert had kept in his study. There were pictures of James as a child, building sandcastles with his grandfather, photos of family barbecues and fishing trips, and newer ones, Emma's first steps on the beach, Robert teaching her to use his old telescope, my art shows in the garden. The sound of cars pulling up broke through my reminiscing. Looking out the window, I saw James's car, followed by Margaret's luxury SUV, Showtime. The family meeting that followed was exactly as tense as I'd expected. We gathered in the living room, where floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the ocean, a view Margaret had always claimed was wasted on my amateur paintings. "This is ridiculous," Margaret started, her voice shrill. "Robert wasn't in his right mind when he made these changes. We'll contest it." "Actually," James interrupted, "I called his lawyer this morning. Everything's ironclad. Dad witnessed the signing himself." Margaret turned to her husband, Thomas, who had been suspiciously quiet until now. "You knew about this?" Thomas shifted uncomfortably. "Rob talked to me about it. Said he wanted to make sure the house stayed what it was meant to be, a place for family to come together, not drift apart." "We are together," Amanda protested. "We're blood." "Blood isn't everything," I said quietly. "Family is about love, support, acceptance." Robert understood that. He saw how you both treated me, how you tried to exclude me, how you made Emma feel less special than Amanda's kids because she's not a peer steward. James's head snapped up. "What? Oh, you didn't know?" I turned to my husband. "Last Christmas, your mother told Emma she couldn't participate in the family gift exchange because she wasn't really a steward since I'm not from the right bloodline." The room fell silent. James looked at his mother in horror. "Tell me that's not true." Margaret's face flushed. "I was just trying to maintain family traditions." "By hurting my daughter." James's voice was dangerously quiet. "By making my wife feel unwelcome in her own family." "She's not family," Margaret burst out. "She's just some girl you married instead of Catherine Williams like we planned." Finally, the truth came out. This had never been about family traditions or bloodlines. It was about control, about Margaret's thwarted plans for her son's life. Enough. James stood up. "Mom, Amanda, you both have a choice to make. Either you accept that Olivia is my wife, Emma is my daughter, and this house belongs to all of us, or you don't visit at all. Your call." Amanda started crying, a tactic that had always worked on her brother before. But James wasn't backing down. He moved to stand beside me, his hand finding mine. "Robert knew what he was doing," he said firmly, "and I support his decision completely." Margaret stood up, smoothing her expensive slacks with trembling hands. "Well, I can see where this is going. Come on, Amanda. We know when we're not wanted." "That's the thing, Margaret," I said, stopping her before she could storm out. "You are wanted. Your family. But family means accepting all of us, not just the ones who fit your ideal image." She paused at the door, her back rigid. For a moment, I thought I saw her shoulders slump, just slightly. But then she straightened up and walked out, Amanda trailing behind her. Thomas lingered, looking torn. "She'll come around," he said finally. "She just needs time." "Rob, he would be proud of you, Olivia. Both of you." As the sound of cars fading into the distance filled the air, James and I stood on the deck, watching the sunset paint the ocean in shades of gold and pink. "I'm sorry," he said softly. "I should have protected you and Emma better." I leaned into his side. "We're protecting each other now. That's what real family does." 3 months passed, and summer was in full swing. Emma had returned from camp, ecstatic to find that not only were we still at the beach house, but her art room had been expanded. James and I had converted one of the unused bedrooms into a proper studio space for both of us, filling it with easels, canvases, and the sound of laughter. The house felt different now, lighter somehow, as if the weight of years of judgment had finally lifted. Without Margaret's constant criticism, we were free to make the place truly our own while honoring Robert's memory. We heard through Thomas that Margaret and Amanda were spending the summer at an exclusive resort, making sure everyone in their social circle knew they were too good for the old family beach house. But their absence had an unexpected effect. Other family members who had stayed away over the years began to return. James's cousin Michael brought his kids for a weekend, something Margaret had always discouraged because his wife was too common. His sister Lucy, who'd been practically disowned for becoming a public school teacher instead of a lawyer, came with her girlfriend. The house was alive with the kind of genuine warmth Robert had always wanted. One evening, as I was setting up for our weekly family barbecue, a tradition I'd started to bring everyone together, I found Emma sitting in Robert's old study, looking at photographs. "Great-Grandpa Rob was really smart, wasn't he?" she said, touching a picture of him teaching her about constellations. "He was," I agreed, sitting beside her. "He knew what really mattered." "Is Grandma Margaret ever coming back?" Emma asked quietly. "Amanda's kids still won't talk to me at school." I pulled her close. "Sometimes people need time to learn important lessons. Your great-grandpa believed everyone could change if given the chance to understand what family really means." As if on cue, we heard a car pulling up outside. Through the window, I saw a familiar luxury SUV. Margaret stepped out, alone, looking uncharacteristically uncertain. James met her at the door. I could see them talking on the porch, his posture gradually relaxing. When they came inside, Margaret's eyes were red. "Olivia," she said, her voice lacking its usual sharp edge. "Could we talk?" In Robert's study, Margaret looked around at the photos, pausing at one of him with Emma and me, all of us covered in paint after an afternoon of art lessons. "He always said you reminded him of my mother," she said softly. "She was an artist too." I thought he was criticizing my choice to give up painting for a more suitable career. "It wasn't criticism," I replied. "It was recognition." Margaret nodded, wiping her eyes. "I've been talking with Thomas. And my therapist." She almost smiled at my surprised look. "I'm trying to understand why I've been so resistant to accepting you. And Emma, the truth is, I've spent my whole life trying to be what I thought a steward should be. I forgot how to just be family." She reached into her bag and pulled out a small package. "I found this in my attic. It's my mother's old sketchbook. I thought maybe Emma might like to see her great-grandmother's art." It was a peace offering, small but significant. "She'd love that," I said. "We're having a barbecue tonight. Would you like to stay?" That evening, as the sun set over the ocean, our expanded family gathered on the deck. Margaret sat with Emma, showing her old sketches and for the first time, really seeing her granddaughter. Amanda called, tentatively asking if she and her kids could visit next weekend. Thomas caught my eye and smiled, raising his glass slightly. Above us, stars began to appear, the same stars Robert used to name for Emma. I could almost hear his voice. "Family isn't about being perfect, kitten. It's about being together." The beach house had become what it was always meant to be, not a symbol of status or bloodline, but a home where family, in all its imperfect, beautiful forms, could grow together. As I watched Margaret genuinely laugh at one of James's jokes, I realized that sometimes the greatest act of family love isn't holding on to anger, but opening the door to change. Robert had known that all along. That's why he left the house to me, not to exclude, but to include, to build bridges instead of walls. In the end, it wasn't about ownership at all. It was about creating a place where everyone could belong, where blood relatives only transformed into all are welcome. That was Robert's true legacy, and we were finally living it.